morning, and it is morning because it's 6:10 a.m. in the morning, and we're all fresh because everybody had eggs this morning. Everybody got breakfast.
I had Weetabix, the chocolate ones. You know, the chocolate Weetabix.
The mini ones.
Mini ones.
Yeah.
Lord.
Sally bought them for the kids, but I was like, had some last night. I was like, well, yeah, they're mine now. Plus, I haven't got any eggs at the moment.
Yeah, I'm not allowed around cereals like that in case the box disappears in my belly. So, yeah. But how are we all doing?
Yeah, good. Yeah, good.
All fine.
Yeah,
fine.
Cool. You've been up to much. You've been going out for meals and visiting different gyms, just trying to feel out your competition.
Went a few people's houses, just one or two people's,
and there was random guys in the streets.
Yeah, and then just
living it up.
Couple of raves, not gonna lie.
Yeah,
So,
I could just picture George at a rave, stood still.
Yeah, just zero movement.
Just people being like, "Why are you here?"
People going past and putting those like light up rings around his head that were just building up as he goes
until he can't see anymore.
I would literally never ever go to a rave.
I think he would go there and he'd phone the police on the people in the rave. He'd go, "No, you guys get out now. I'm phoning the cops."
I'll be there with the binoculars. There's more of them. There was that one in the last lockdown.
There was, it was huge as well. Like by Bath, I think it was thousands of people.
So it was in like Larkall Way, and outside of the other side of Bath. We could hear it from our house.
Oh, yeah, that's fun.
Really?
Yeah. Sally was like, "Oh, have you been playing some music down there?" I was like, "No."
4 in the morning.
I was like, no, I was still going at like 7, 8 in the morning.
Yeah, I know, it's savage. So today we're talking about flexible dieting, and just want to sort of share to the people what flexible dieting is, what it entails, and then some helpful tips and some things then they actually try and avoid as well, because I think flexible dieting has its good and bad points, and some people abuse the flexible part of it and they don't ever come back to the part where you're supposed to taper back, and they suffer a lot of problems. But from my understanding, flexible dieting is where you are not sticking to specific food groups. You're not tying yourself down to, I'm only eating this type of food and that type of food. And it's basically about actually hitting your calorie intake, making sure that you get your major nutrients in there, mainly being protein, I would say, in there. And then you can then be flexible with the other nutrients that are there. So your carbohydrates and fats. So that means that you can exchange healthy food for less healthy food, let's say, or high calorie dense, low nutrient density foods. And that's sort of the basics of it. It sort of came up big a couple of years ago. If it fits your macros is basically a flexible dieting scheme, isn't it? And it has its place, especially in fitness, but there is pitfalls in there and there is good things about it. Have you ever tried flexible dieting yourselves, the both of you?
I think kind of I've always probably naturally done it.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean, like without before it became an actual thing. I think I've always just been the type to be like, well, I've eaten excess calories here, I better pull back over the next few days without really hence why I kind of managed my weight my entire life since being a kid. And I think I remember doing that even as a kid. As like if I ate a big meal or if I had a big day of eating rubbish, the next day I'd probably just be a little bit more conscious. So yeah, I'd say I have and probably do and will do that
forever.
Without
basically tracking. It was just tracking without giving it a name. No.
Essentially,
it's just now got an official name. It's like a dieting name. They just chuck diet on the end of it. No.
Yeah.
And it's so stupid, like that we go through that because everything has to be given a label rather than just eating. Or here's your lifestyle change that you're going to try and partake in for the rest of your life, because that's essentially what most of the people that come to us anyway for training want to do. They don't want to be doing yo-yos up and down in their weight, constantly battling through like the emotions of losing weight, because that's essentially what's happening, isn't it? Losing weight's a very, very, very uncomplicated situation. It's we complicated by emotions.
I think if you look at what humans naturally do through the course of a year, flexible dieting is what kind of, or it has natural points in the year, doesn't it? You take Christmas as an example, when people overeat.
Yeah.
And then majority of people will then eat less in January and February, drink less, eat less. So yeah, I think there's an element of that. And like you said, that it's been labeled. What I do really like about it is the using a weekly calorie tracker rather than doing it daily. So you hit a kind of weekly target, which gives you the flexibility of having a day or two in the week that
buzzword flexible. Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Exactly.
Flexibility.
Exactly.
Good.
Exactly. Tags.
It's like it's kind of like dealing with a bank account, isn't it? But on a weekly basis, where you have a certain amount of money and you can spend that money however which way you want. But at the end of the day, you only have that much money to spend, and that's what we should be doing with calories. And you could stretch that the weekly, you could stretch that the bi-weekly, you could stretch that the monthly calories if you really wanted. It's just, I think, the further away you stretch that chicken, the harder it is. There might be a week of not eating. If you get a month, you might be like, I've had 12 pizzas in 12 days, so
I'm not eating the rest of the month now. That's me done.
Day 12 into the month, and I've got no more calories left.
That's kind of where the problems are, isn't it? That's kind of where the problems fall. Is like you can use flexible, and you can eat way too much on a day, and it's become very, very difficult to pull that back.
Do you?
I don't know about.
No, you gonna add.
I don't know about you guys, but I basically use an even simplified version of it for with clients, especially when they first, or they've never tracked before. Basically, I use this flexible dieting as the first introduction into, okay, this is how I want you to start the process and journey of losing weight, where instead of going into that next level where you know what macros you're choosing with if you fit your macro section, it's just them based on calories for the first step to get people into it. It's basically what I use.
But it's it's far too complicated to go any deeper than that, really, Jack. And there is people out there that want to go in and touch on that level when the client doesn't even know what a macro is, and it's not the client's fault. It's more the fault of the trainer for assuming that person has this knowledge base. And then like you said, if the calories are in check, they're going to lose weight. They lose weight, they're going to be motivated. When they're motivated, you can say, hey, why don't we have a little look at protein now? You see, because that might push us forward. And then they're like, actually, well, this has been working, so whatever you say. Whereas if you go in like, right, so I want 30% of your diet on carbohydrates, I want 20 on carbs, I want the rest on protein. They're like,
around trying to work it all out.
I eat loads of protein. I had 6 bananas yesterday.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just, but you will get results, and that's a good point. Do you use? Tell me this. Do you use calorie tracking? Would you use portion control, or what would you do with those people for the first time when you're saying, like, when you're going into that sort of flexible dieting stage at the start?
So the first thing I normally say is I normally use like a MyFitnessPal like app, whatever one. Yeah. If they've got another one they use, fine. I use that to almost act as a food log. So I just get them to scan their food. They know what it is. I have access to that account, and then we just look at it. Just be like, just eat what you eat. Just make a note of it. Yeah. And then that simple act for 1 week, 2 weeks on its own can easily act as an education tool for them to be like, shit, I didn't know there were 300-400 calories in this bowl of cereal I was having. And always freak out. But that's what I was like, do this, and then one, that'll tick so many boxes anyway. And then just move on from there. And like you said, with the introduction of maybe, okay, let's look at protein as the next step. Most people probably don't, like, I haven't moved many people on from that stage.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's not necessary. Like, why overcomplicate a process that can be overcomplicated so easily? Just be like, just do that. Like, we're still getting results. You're still getting what you want. Exactly.
You're still eating what you want. I think then is when you're like, let's because sometimes you can get people come to you being like, what can we do next? You know, if they're seeing results and they're looking and they're hitting that plateau, and that's when you can be like, well, actually we can start looking at your protein because it will keep you satiated for longer. So it means that you'll probably want a little bit less of that stuff, which overall will control your calories and make things a little bit easier. What about you, George? What method would you use? Would you do something similar to Jack?
Yeah, I do something pretty similar. And again, a really good way of doing it for me is with the calorie tracker. Once they know what they're getting in and they can put it down for the majority of the week, it means they can have their couple of drinks on the weekend, and it makes social events much easier. I think we've probably all done it in the past with clients where we've made their diets so strict that they become worried about that. Oh no, but I'm going out then and I don't know what am I going to choose. And it's very easy, it's very nice, I should say, for me to be like, when they ask me that, like, just eat what you want. Just eat what you want and stick to this through the week. I've also used portion control for the people who have just been like, no, I can't do the calorie thing. So I've just gone, look, why don't you have a little think about, very similar in a way to what Jack was saying about writing it down in the Fitness Pal for the first few days without making any changes. I kind of say, well, why don't you just eat what you eat, but pay some attention to your plate size, pay some attention to how many scoops of whatever you're putting on your plate. And then over the next few days, maybe just, take a third off everything.
Make a reduction in something.
Make a reduction in something. But that still gives this, it's the same thing, it's just we're doing it slightly differently. It's still flexible dieting, but you're not tracking calories as such. But they can still have their weekend. I don't want to call it a treat, but that they have a social event where they can go out and kind of just enjoy themselves rather than worry about food so much. How many times have we heard it, Si, in the gym, where people are just so stressed out about meals and nights out?
People don't want to go places, they want to do things. But it's a good point where you're saying even if you're just attacking it from a portion control thing, you're not saying to them don't eat any of these foods. You're not fear mongering, you're not doing anything, you're just saying like control. Also, I'm looking for some sort of level of control, because we all know that if people ate the food that they're eating now and they just reduce the portion control, like the heaviest people out there in the world, if they controlled the portion of what they're eating, regardless of the nutrients, they would lose weight. It's just an energy system here. They would lose weight if they did that. Obviously, if they move more, it's going to be more beneficial for everything in their body. But initially, they're going to lose weight if they just control. If I had a pizza every day, and I took one slice of that pizza away, it's going to have an effect over. It might be a long period of time if that's all I'm reducing, but it will have an effect.
Yeah, that's important to note, is that the deeper you go, the more calories you cut, faster the weight's going to come off. But you can cut a small amount off and see results at a steadier time, which is probably more sensible for the majority of people. But although I do like, sometimes I do think a kind of few weeks of a shock and awe, deeper restriction can sometimes help people when their motivation's a little lower, if you know what I mean, just to get some results
sometimes
going.
Man, you can go the old veg and protein route and do a 2-week stint and get a 12-pound drop, probably mostly water. But you've just pushed people's motivation up to be like, right, I'm focused again. Like I think UP Fitness used to do that. Right. Like I might be wrong, but I think they used to start and kick off their like weight loss, a serious 12-week stuff of like 2 weeks of no carbs. Just to get people in, and start reintroducing food again. Like they used to say, because it would kickstart fat loss, but I think it kickstarts your process of your mind being focused on food. But again, that they're in a single market where everybody comes in is signed up and agreed to do 80, 90.
You have to like qualify as well, almost. It's like you have to be like, are you going to do this? You have to like tick boxes. If you don't tick they won't accept you. They won't accept you. You won't get in. So
I think it's a really good system, but it's a really good system for purely success, because
for what they want to do.
They say to you at the end in their thing, this is what we expect of you, and this is what you can expect of us. And if that's not okay, then maybe we're not for you. So you automatically go in there being like, I'll do whatever you want.
Well, yeah. Like we have I clinic like that used UP Fitness to get where she was, and then she's been with us for a few years now.
Yeah.
And she's a beast, don't get me wrong, like in ridiculous shape. But we spoke about calories, and I was like, well, you were at UP Fitness, right? And just spoke about it. And I asked her what calories she was on now, and she'd left there for quite a while, and she had stayed on the same calories she was there the whole time. So only 1,200.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is super low.
Wow.
Like she's very petite anyway, but there's obviously, I don't know, I'm not going to speak on their process, but post their phase of work, their 12 weeks, whatever it is, where you get shredded,
when you leave, I think then
obviously there wasn't any education to be like, look, you can come out of that calorie deficit now, because that's incredibly low, and then increase it.
Right. Yeah, so they're basically signing up a lot. Well, I would expect then, by the sounds of that, a lot of people are signing up and doing 12 weeks and then just leaving.
Well, you don't. There's like obviously as a business, the client turnover is huge, because you do what you want to do, then you go away.
Yeah,
but that's
mad.
Like we said before, it's not sustainable. You don't stay like that.
That's mad.
Like you come back out of it, but
that's in the same. But that's then the person probably being like, well, I got all these results and these calories, so I think I've got to stay there.
Yeah, and stay like that.
When you instead of being like, hold on, like I'm actually moving more, doing more, I can eat more, feel better.
Exactly.
And going back to what George was saying as well earlier about the whole like us living normally and going up in calories and going down in calories, like that's a natural thing that we should all be doing. Like we have hormones in our body that should be telling us that we're hungry and telling us that we're full up, and they should be flexing every time we over or under eat. So naturally, if we had a high day of calories, the next day your body should be like, not actually that hungry for breakfast, we should probably skip that. We don't need quite so much there. And that's kind of how I would say we live as trainers, because we're so in tune with actually eating food and everything else. So and I hear the slimmest people in the world, the skinniest people naturally do that, and they don't need to be doing it. So how many times have you heard somebody being like, that person, she's so skinny, but she eats pizza, she eats cake, she just eats whatever she wants. And I'm like, let's dive a little bit deeper into whatever she wants. She might eat a pizza on one day, but then she won't eat a meal for the rest of the day. You know,
so
or they might have
calories came from pizza.
That's it. Or they might eat a cake or something like that and nail that whole thing, but they don't eat dinner and they don't eat breakfast. So and that's where people don't see it. They only see the initial, she's eating cake, she's skinny, or he's eating McDonald's and he's not gaining any weight. He ate McDonald's once in a month.
Yeah.
And then he also didn't eat breakfast the next day and had a really light lunch because he also felt too full up. I always use Mike, who we used to work with, as an example. I mean, Mike would sit there and polish down a whole tray of flapjacks or a half a cake. He'd sit there and people would be like, oh my God, and he was 6% body fat. But then Mike wouldn't eat breakfast and he wouldn't eat lunch the next day.
Yeah.
And they didn't see that.
And just as Mike wasn't doing that intentionally.
Never.
He wasn't going, I ate that, so I won't eat this. That's just the way he kind of was. He wasn't hungry. Yeah, he wasn't hungry when they breakfast and lunchtime, so he just didn't eat. Yeah. He got hungry later on and thought, there's some cake there that someone brought in.
That's it.
And just,
I think I think that touches on to like the limit, well, not the like one of the limiting factors of using that or this system, and that it's fine if you can handle it, but having a load of flapjacks and then not eating for 2 days, especially if you then have to train that day, isn't the best. So there's that, like the limiting scale of it is like you can push it and be naughty with it, but then
you suffer.
The performance aspect of it, it's not great because
recovery and everything. Then all
those sort of things. Yeah, is it optimal? No, like doing that side of it. There's that bad side where it's actually ends up not being optimal. Especially if you're doing it regularly. You're like, on Tuesday, I'm not having pizza, so I'm not going to eat for Wednesday and Thursday. And then it's like, right, but you got to train then, so then your training session's affected. And then all that stuff gets mixed in. So there's the limiting factor where it gets pushed to the wrong end.
Yeah, I think what people need to remember is if they're just under, their calorie threshold for 5 days, they don't need to then not eat to have a big high calorie meal. for a day or so, because all they have to do is go back to that just about under their calorie threshold for the next 5 days. And you've got 5 days there, 5 days there. Middle day where you have a social event and enjoy it, calories go up by quite a bit, but actually those 10 days have covered it. So you don't need to, but that becomes, that's what I was trying to say earlier, is that these days for people often become stressors, nights out, days out with family, where they become stressed. Like, okay, so I must, like Jack was saying, overcompensate by not eating 2 days. It's not necessary. If those days around it are, controlled by this day, by the 9th day, you're fine. Nothing's going to happen.
Balance
because
is out,
of here.
Right?
But that is a point, that one of the negative points is people do
use it, don't they?
They use it to go, right, that no food, so that's that, just be mindful, Jack, that Jack's point there.
I wrote down a point when, Simon, you said about how people's calories can fluctuate up and down, and that's natural, especially for women, especially with their, like when they're on their cycle and things like that for 2 weeks of the month, and then not on it for 2 weeks a month or whatever it is. Like there's an argument where for women with flexible dieting that, look, okay, for those 2 weeks, don't worry about it. Or that week, don't worry about it. The next 2 weeks, come back on, so then they can handle it, because I don't know what it's like. I can't imagine. And so I imagine the calorie requirement is much higher. There's different things and different things you need. And so having that fluctuation, where it's using the flexible system where it's not so dead strict, you have to do this for the whole month when your body's all over the place. Especially important.
It's definitely when like carbohydrates and stuff are introduced there, because it seems that like females mostly will crave like some sort of snacky treat, and they like the carbohydrates, but also from the data, they deal a lot better with carbohydrates from insulin point of view in those times
around the cycle.
That's it. So you could just easily tip that balance and be like, let's just reduce the or two, and you have a bit more. It's like, it's going to make you feel better. You're going to feel less restricted, and at a time where your hormones are playing around, don't put yourself under that kind of stress.
Oh yeah.
On the note of sugar and
George, carry on. I'm going to get a charger. Carry on.
Go get a charger going. It's just he doesn't want me to ask questions. This is what's going.
Go away.
On the point of sugar, Jack. Obviously, recently it initially got demonized quite a while ago, and now there's this whole trend where people are shouting at people who say sugar's bad. But talk to me about bad, inverted commas for anyone who's listening, bad foods. People are telling people not to call any foods bad. What do you think of that?
Well, that comes into this whole flexible dieting thing, doesn't it? In that the sense that the whole thing was created in order for there to be no bad food, so you can eat whatever you want. And I mean, to a point, there are no bad foods generally, in the sense that, generally speaking, you could, like Simon said, you could eat pizza every day, but have it under your calories and reduce the calories over time. You would still lose weight, probably be slower maybe, but you would still do it. So can you then use that to then argue that pizza's bad? The pizza is bad because you have it every single day. It's not pizza being bad on its own specifically. But
the Italians do well on pizza,
that's generally speaking the sense, isn't it? Like you could, if you had lard once every 6 years, lard's not bad. It was not going to be bad for you in that sense. That's generally speaking. If you then go on an individual basis, there probably are foods that are bad for you, and you probably just don't know, in the sense that there are some of those foods where the next morning you're sat on the toilet for an extra 25 minutes. You're like, ooh, what did I eat? And then you don't really know. You don't like. Remember,
Facebook's been Simon, great today.
But Simon, you mentioned it ages ago. If your dog goes outside and does the runniest shit you've ever seen, you're probably like, what did you eat?
I'm taking something. I do that. I do it all the time. I'm taking something out of her diet. I think it might be this.
Something happens. Whereas humans, for some reason, don't really seem to do that. So in that sense, there are bad foods because one, like, it's just not working great for you. You don't feel great off it. So then, yes, there are bad foods, but it's one, either it's bad individually for you, or it's bad because you keep having it too much, and it's that volume of that food is then bad, not the food itself.
Yeah, usually when I hear influencers and people talking about bad foods, actually the context of their vlog is really good, but usually the title is misleading to anyone who has kind of a limited knowledge of
basically the daily meal,
you know. Yeah, so it's kind of like, there are no bad foods. If you just read that, you're like,
sweet,
this is great, let's go and get 10, you know. So I think, I agree with you, Jack. I think being mindful of how much of that type of food, the low nutrient type of foods you eat, is the key, rather than just eliminate. And that falls right into flexible dieting, that you can have these foods, but you have to be mindful of how much, and you have to pull back if you're trying to manage weight. Would you say, guys, that flexible dieting is more for an individual is better for an individual trying to maintain their weight, or is it quite workable for people who want to lose weight?
I would say it's good for both.
Yeah,
it's good for both, as long as the lessons are there. Especially when you come to something that's maintaining weight, usually you're in a better mind frame or mind state, because you're now at a point where you're like, I'm really happy with this, I want to keep this. So doing the flexible diet approach will probably work out even better with somebody like that, because of where they are emotionally, where they are with physically, everything. But also with the fat loss, and somebody's trying to lose, it's really good because you're not putting restriction on some people. You're giving them the free will to make a decision, and hopefully the right decision, which then, you know, how many people are like, oh, I started dieting this, I have to eat like a rabbit for most of my life. They just don't want that. You know, people always think like automatically, if you say to somebody, oh, you want to go on a diet, what would a diet entail? It'd be like, oh, eating lots of vegetables and stuff. And people don't eat lots of vegetables. Like, even the people that say they eat lots of vegetables don't eat lots of vegetables. So it's just an easier way to not put restriction on. So I would say both.
Yeah, 100%. And it just acts as a great system of education, if anything else.
Yeah, I think so.
Like, it's like when you said about influencers, George, the first thought that came to my mind I wrote down was when they go on about what do they call it, intuitive eating.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, fuck off, mate. No, you've probably tracked loads before, so you now know. Like, that's not the same as someone having never educated themselves with what happens with your food and what you're eating, then just judging it based off the plate in front of them. It's not. There is no intuitive eating. You've educated yourself previously, probably through a flexible dieting system, most likely.
Yeah.
To then be able to say, I intuitively eat. So that's the main thing for me, probably education at the beginning.
Yeah, education, definitely. That just made me think of, like, as obviously because we're in lockdowns now, and home workouts are all over the place, all these influencers who are like these like jacked up, like they're like 50 pounds of solid muscle with 1% body fat, and they're like, yo, you can see the workouts that help me get in shape, and they're fucking doing star jumps with like high knees and stuff, and I'm like,
that's not what you do though.
No. That's how you built that chest. Oh, right. So doing high knees gives you pecs. Like, oh my God, I've been training wrong my whole life. It's just so funny. I watch these guys, and like nobody's watching it for being like, oh my God, that's a great workout. They're just like, oh, holy shit, that guy's in extreme shape. Like, it's just clicks. It's clicks all the time. So these people will lie through their teeth. There's some guy comes on YouTube at the minute, some American again. Do I want to eat this bowl of salad, or do I want to have this pizza?
Yeah, I've seen this guy.
I'll tell you. Yeah, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'll save you my top fat loss secrets. And I'm like, you're lying. You lie all the time. You're on.
That's the guy, right? That's the same guy that when he's talking, he's flexing his pecs.
Oh no,
he's flexing his pecs every time he's chatting.
It's a nice kitchen, though. It's a very nice kitchen. Wherever he is,
it is a very nice kitchen. Yeah,
but it's so funny.
Nice kitchen.
I also wanted to go on that point back where George was saying about the people. Well, just flexible dieting and being abused. Really, is that it can be so unhealthy. I mean, I could flexible diet right now and what I have and basically eat cereal because that's my crux for, I don't know, I could probably have 19 bowls in a day and then just drink protein shakes for the rest to get my protein. And like, that's not going to do me any good. Like and this is the problem is people will just be like, I'm going to eat that pack of donuts and then I'll just not eat the rest of the day. And you're like, no, but you're missing your protein, you know, muscle tissue needs that, your body and your immune system need that. And also you haven't got a single ounce of any type of veg or anything that's going to act as a gut regulator to try and pass stuff through. Do you know what I mean? So you can abuse the system, and some people, and people always will. It doesn't matter what happens, people always will. Yeah. I just wanted to touch on now. So what would be 3 things? Or we'll go a thing each. Let's say one tip on what you would avoid while flexible dieting.
What we would avoid by flexible dieting.
What would you avoid by flexible dieting? Because it's, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, do this, do that, but there are pitfalls, and we've mentioned a lot here.
I think the main thing I would avoid is looking at an event, like I said earlier. I think I touched on it earlier. Looking at an event and maybe not eating for like 1 or 2 days before it or after it to make up for the fact that the calories are going to be really high on that day. I would say just maintain what you're doing. Have that day where you have a, you know, whatever social event or whatever, and then go back to normal. Because I think what can happen is it's not just about that day. People can start going, well, I'll do that day and then I'll not eat here. Or but actually there's a day in the middle of the week I'll do that and then I'll not eat there. And all of a sudden you've not eaten properly for 4 days out of the 7 in a week.
Yeah.
You know, I think you just got to be careful with that particular point there.
Yeah. Jack?
Yeah, I'll piggyback off the back of that comment and then I can add a layer.
Piggyback off the back?
Off the back.
Do you know what? You've changed ever since you got your little pen and your little notepad and you're making your little notes in between.
Yeah.
You've changed. Oh, here's a point that I came up with earlier when you guys were chatting. You've changed, man.
Serious podcasting. So off the back of what George said, I think one of the things to avoid doing is not thinking about or noticing how you feel off what you're eating. Because it kind of goes in with exactly what George said, where if you're doing that system, you probably feel like shit for a couple of days and then it affects your training. We said it earlier. That's the thing I would avoid, and not noting it down and being like, actually, I felt like dog shite after having those flapjacks and not eating for 2 days. So that wasn't worth it. That aspect I would avoid.
Yeah, no, that's definitely
before you go, Si. Yeah. Before you go, Si, I'm gonna have to bow out. So I will catch you next time.
Yeah. So he wants us to do all these slick intros and then he does horrible exits where he just leaves.
Horrible. Just mid conversation. I'm going.
By the way, I've got to go. 10 minutes in, I've got to go. Bye.
Yeah. Don't act like you're not happy that I'm leaving.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
Who should I assign as the host?
Anybody?
Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
Rock, paper, scissors. Yeah, go.
Oh, I did scissors. I'll do it up here.
Did you hide it?
Yeah,
did you hide it underneath and then come back up?
Come on.
Okay, wait. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Stayed.
Okay, Simon it is.
Yeah.
See you later, gents. Enjoy the rest of the podcast. Probably going to be excellent without me.
No, it's going to be better. Later.
Bye.
What I was just going to say there on top of that as well is things to avoid. Don't get carried away with losing track of your food in terms of like, I'm flexible dieting, so I'm just taking bits out here and putting bits in there, because you can easily fall into that pitfall of not having any idea what you're consuming. Do you know what I mean? Like somebody just being like, I was going to have some a jacket potato today, but I'm going to skip that and I'm just going to have some cake after lunch. That cake could be 5 jacket potatoes. Do you know what I mean? It could be so high in the calories. So I just find that people will just push the boundaries, but also they'll not check in with themselves. So they'll be like, I've been flexible dieting now for a couple of weeks. And you'd be like, I know, I just put some foods in, I take some foods out. And you're like, yeah, but have you been actually keeping an eye on, or do you understand the value of certain foods?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
calorie expenditure. That, like, if they don't understand the value, then really you don't know flexible dieting, and therefore you're just eating what you want.
Yeah, and then you just end up back. You always basically end up in a cycle of you have to go back into being a bit stricter again. So you end up just basically going back into yo-yo dieting almost, which is the whole thing you're trying to avoid by using this system.
Yeah, so they end up just being like, oh, I've gained weight this week, and I'll try and go back down, and then they're like, oh, I've got under control, so I'll just keep doing the flexible bit. I've gained weight again.
Yeah, so it never ends.
Nothing's happening here. What about, so tips on how to make flexible dieting work? Have you got any of those? So what do we get people to pay attention to when they're dieting?
So initially it will be to explain and have the person understand, or have people understand about the, like you said, the budget almost. You're a kid, here's the money you can spend on food for the week. That's your calories.
Yeah.
That's the first thing get them to understand that it's a week rather than
a time shot in a day.
Each day, just because then that again depends on the individual. Some people won't like that week because they'll flout the rules and then do what we just spoke about. And then they'll prefer the day. But I think the main thing is to get them to understand the budget rule, where it's like, look, this is what you've got, spend it, and then how they go spend it will act as an education tool anyway, because they'll be like, actually, I did rubbish. I didn't feel that great. Or
they've done I ate so much in the morning, I've got nothing left for the rest of the day type of thing. Like, because they're like, I've just overate, and they do that day in, day out.
Yeah, exactly. So actually, I've thought of a question. Say, like George said, someone earlier is like, I don't want to track. I don't want to do it. How would someone get around that? Be like, no, I don't want to do that. So how can I use flexible dieting? How can I?
Yeah, because that is the hardest. That's the hardest way to go about it. Because if you do not track, you don't understand value.
No.
And most of the people who are the most successful at flexible dieting know what's in their food. They know on some sort of ballpark figure. Like, I know how much a croissant is. I know roughly how much a bowl of cereal is. I know how much 100 grams of rice is. Do you know what I mean? I know the values of most of the food. So I could flexible diet and not track whatsoever, but it's because I've tracked before.
Yeah.
It's because I've spent time in the trenches tracking foods. I know what slices of bread are worth. I know how much butter is too much butter. You know, these are key things, and I wouldn't know that unless I did some tracking. So that's a hard question, but again, the only way that I could see that working is that you come into a portion control system where you actually pay attention to the portions. So you know, you're limited to X amount of carbs per meal and X amount of protein per meal and fats. And then if you want to have a bit more carbs, you take away some of the fats. Because there has to be a measure, doesn't there, in flexible dieting?
Well, that's it. You limit yourself. It's always going to be guesswork. If you're not using it, it's all just a guess, which at that point, you might as well, how can you help yourself? Like, because I mean, I can guesstimate after you telling me, or you can guesstimate after looking at it and trying to do the mental maths in your head, being like, oh, look at the back of a packet when you're having your toast, be like, yeah, probably around that. Like, but then
my butter was probably that double it.
Yeah.
I only had like 5 or 6 nuts, 20.
Yeah,
you know, how much is
olive oil? Olive oil,
olive
the
oil,
classic. Like, boom. Oh, I only have that much. Yeah, that's like 1,000 right there.
I tell you what, when I actually go in full scale tracking calories, the oil is the one that shocks me the most, because I tablespoon it. I always tablespoon it. I'm like, that's not what I was doing before.
Oh no.
And then when you're like trying to save 100 calories or something like that, you're like, oh shit, this tablespoon of oil is 200 calories. I need to cut that down. Like, so you can see why people use the spray, the 1 cal spray, like, just because it's just so low.
Bodybuilders use olive oil to make weight or like gain weight, because it's just easy calories, like chuck it in a shake and stuff.
Yeah, they won't even notice that. Whereas if they had to eat an extra potato a day, like, to them, that's a lot of food.
Yeah, heavy.
Just throw a dressing over the salad that they have on the side if there's plenty of food. They'd be like, I don't even know notice that's there. It's liquid, so it's
But
that's a
that's
really
it,
good point. I
man.
remember watching years ago, watching one of them like diet programs where you get somebody big to eat somebody small food and somebody small to eat somebody big food.
Oh yeah.
And you see, and the woman was just caning. I think it was like in a week, she's caning 2 bottles of olive oil in a week. She was a chef. So, and you know what chefs are like. Chefs are just,
Oh,
olive
they're like
oil.
drizzle.
Jamie Oliver is just like, right, what we're going to do is we're going to put olive oil in the pan. We'll put the food on the pan and we'll put some olive oil on it. And then when we take it off, we're going to put some olive oil on the board. And then and then we're going to finish it with olive oil. And you're like, that's a bottle.
And then just to cook it all up, we're going to add 2 cubes of butter, and then the cubes are like this.
Yeah, man. Seriously, when you're cooking steak, it's like the steak swimming in fat.
Oh, yeah. It's like James Martin on Saturday. Butter, and he's just like, boom, 10 cubes. There you go.
Yeah, literally. Here's the half a tub. But it is funny. It's like little things like that. That's where you sort of come in and you have to pay attention to it. And again, you could portion control that if you were like, right, I'm going to do a tablespoon per meal. That's it, and then I'll drop it down to a teaspoon. But if you do not have some form of measure, what's going to happen? And it's the same way fat loss, because like, how do you know if you're going to losing fat if you're not A, checking your weight, B, doing measurements, or C, paying attention to your clothes? Clothes are still a measure. If you're going down in dress sizes, that's a measurement. So that means you're tracking some sort of progress. If you did none of those 3 things, what are you going by?
Yeah,
because I've heard people who diet for like 4 days and they're like, do you know what? I feel slimmer. I really feel slimmer. I'm like, what?
What?
Like, what? Hey, that's
okay.
4 days. Like you've probably lost a pound of water.
Like, I don't know, you sweated it out and probably didn't drink it back.
Yeah, that's it. I feel really slim now. And I'm like, yeah, cool. Ride that feeling out. Let's get the measurements going.
Yeah, that's it.
Everyone
will measure everything else apart from that. Like everything else in their life, track what they spend, how much fuel's in their car, all these other things. But that, for some reason, is like, taboo.
Taboo. Yeah, I don't want to create. And I get it. There's mental health is at the minute. This seems to be something that's like at the forefront of everything. It's a forefront of news and everything else because of the pandemic and so on. So people can get carried away, but I think if just like anything, if you use especially tracking calories, because let's face it, it's not really that hard. It's just we're lazy and we're on our phones all the time.
2 seconds.
You can scan stuff at the shop.
Oh, it takes 20 seconds. Oh, I had a yogurt. Done.
Yeah.
Half the time, I think people forget that, or maybe they over-exaggerate in their minds how varying their food is each week. Like, but I can't track that much food. It's like, you probably eat 90% of the same things most of the time.
Yeah.
You do it once.
We vary probably like 10 meals.
Yeah. Once you've done it, it's in there. So all we have to do is just select it again.
Yeah. Reselect.
It doesn't disappear. You don't have to rescan.
Yeah. I'd say the first week is probably your hardest week because you're having to put this value in and after that. But also nobody knows the portion of pasta. I haven't met a single person out there who knows what pasta should be. And it's very simple if you measure it. And it's also really, really simple to keep a track of. Or rice. People have no idea about rice. They're like, I cooked rice for 1,000 people here. I don't know what happened because you did this with a bag.
Yeah.
Oh, that looks about right there. Like what? And I'm gonna try and make a video on it because tracking calories is not that hard. If I'm having rice, I use a protein scoop and I always have them. But if I'm eating pasta and stuff like that, where I put the pasta in the bowl or in the pan, I have the pan set on a scale. It's very simple. And I just tip it in there until it hits a number where I'm like, oh, that's about a portion there. I don't want to eat any more. I mean, it takes a second extra to put the scale out and have the pan on there. I mean, it's not that hard.
Yeah. People bake all the time. People bake during the lockdowns and must have way of the stuff. So they got all the stuff.
Well, exactly. So if they bake, what do you do with bacon?
100 grams of sugar, measure everything.
200 grams of flour. All right. So write that down, put it into MyFitnessPal, and then there, boom, shebang. That's and if they did that, they'd be like, I can't eat the cake. Daily calorie.
And then they have that and then don't eat for the next week. But that's
yeah. Well, I think it is. I think people overcomplicate stuff, but again, emotions are tied into it. We were talking earlier about, you mentioned about the dog thing. And I actually had a good conversation with a friend the other day about that. And I was like, we overcomplicate the most simplistic thing ever, which is losing weight. Move more, eat a bit less, right? We overcomplicate that like you would never believe. We come in with all these hormones and your thyroid and your metabolism that nobody knows what is, and all these things. But again, if it was my dog, I'd reduce her food and I take her for a longer walk. And why is that so easy? Because there's no emotion involved, because I'm not eating it. There's no emotion involved because I'm not missing out on anything, but I'm doing the right thing for my dog. When it comes to ourselves, we start thinking, well, I just feel like I'm so restricted and I can't have my favorite foods that are, that are habits that I built up over my lifetime, and yada, 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 yada. So the truth of everything is that people fail at diets because of emotions, not because of foods and everything else. It's because they've got so many, I rely on that food when I feel bad or when I feel happy or when I feel stressed. And with your dog can't talk to you and tell you how stressed it is.
It's probably pissed off. Yeah, it's like, what the fuck is this portion of food? What?
You're trying to tell me that like an obese dog who's now on a diet and walking more is happy?
Yeah.
It's probably like, right, there's normally a lot more treats by this time in the day. So what is my dog knows what 6 o'clock is. She runs your food bowl and it's like, come on,
let's go. It's and like after a massive long walk, the extra walk you're giving them, is like, you were on the same walk we were on, right?
Yeah.
I need more food than this.
Yeah, you see, I was running up and down that field, like, give me energy.
You should see me go. Look at this pathetic piece of
that video online where they're like pretend dieting their dog. Have you seen that, where they scoop loads of food?
I haven't.
So they basically have their dog there at dinner time and they have their dog bowl and they go into the food bag and they scoop up and they put like 2 pieces of kibble in there and they drop it down. The dogs are like, well, and some of them are like, come on.
Yeah. I haven't seen that. I have to watch that.
Yeah, they know what's going on. So, but we don't care because they can't talk to us.
Well, we can't notice it. That's it.
Yeah. I think it's good to leave on that note because that's a perfect analogy there. But it's been brilliant catch up. Nice and early, 6 a.m.
Awesome.
Started as well.
Yeah, it's not too bad. It's all right. Good time.
I'm good with 6 a.m. man. I'm better with 6 than I am with 3 in the afternoon.
Yeah, by then it's like, ooh, nap.
Yeah, literally. But we'll catch up same time next week. Look out for the podcasts. They'll be going up on YouTube. We'll be filtering them through Instagram and Facebook.
Awesome.
Good chatting to you, Jack.
Man. Have a good day, man. I'll see you later.